My daughter Piper just turned 8 years old. 53 family members watched her open what looked like a birthday cake at her party. Inside was a document with blood-red writing that said, "You're not one of us. Even your real parents didn't want you." My little girl collapsed, sobbing on the floor. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just pulled out my phone and played one video. Within minutes, my mother-in-law Francine was on her knees, begging me to delete it. "I'm Jenna, and I need to tell you what happened at my daughter's birthday party 6 months ago, because what started as a celebration turned into the moment I declared war on my husband's entire family. You might think I'm exaggerating, but when someone attacks your child, when they try to destroy an innocent 8-year-old girl in front of everyone she loves, you discover exactly what kind of mother you really are." My name is Jenna Brennan. I'm 34 years old, and I work as an elementary school librarian in Hartford, Connecticut. My husband Brett is a veterinarian who specializes in exotic animals, the kind of man who'll stay up all night nursing a sick iguana back to health. We met 12 years ago when I brought in a wounded crow I'd found in the school parking lot. He saved that bird and stole my heart in the process. 2 years later, we were married, and 2 years after that, our daughter Piper was born. Piper is the light of our lives. She has these incredible hazel eyes that change from green to gold depending on the light, and wild auburn curls that she inherited from my grandmother. She reads at a 5th grade level, loves unicorns with an obsession that borders on religious devotion, and has never met an animal she didn't want to adopt. Last month, she tried to convince us that the possum living under our deck needed to come inside because he looks lonely, Mommy. But from the moment Piper was born, my mother-in-law, Francine, has been a problem. Francine Brennan owns 3 successful bakeries in Hartford and acts like she's royalty because of it. She married my father-in-law, Gerald, when she was 19, had Brett at 21, followed by Deanna at 23 and Colton at 25. She's now 58 years old and rules her family like a dictator in designer heels. "That baby doesn't look like us," Francine said the first time she held Piper in the hospital. "Her nose is all wrong, and that hair color? No one in the Brennan family has red hair." Brett had laughed it off. "Mom, genetics are complicated. Jenna's grandmother had auburn hair." "Convenient," Francine had muttered, handing my newborn back to me like she was returning defective merchandise. The comments never stopped. Every family gathering, every holiday, every casual Sunday dinner became an interrogation. "Piper's eyes are so light," Francine would observe. "Brett's eyes were always dark brown, even as a baby." Or she'd measure Piper's height against the doorframe and frown. "She's too tall for her age. Brett was always small until high school." My sister-in-law, Deanna, who's 35 and manages one of Francine's bakeries, always backed up her mother. "It is strange, Jenna. I mean, we're just concerned about family medical history, you understand." She'd smile while she said it, the kind of smile that never reaches your eyes. Colton, the youngest at 33, married a woman named Trina, who came from old Hartford money. Together, they perfected the art of subtle cruelty. "We're just saying," Trina would chirp at family gatherings, "it's important to know your real genealogy, for health reasons." Only Gerald, Brett's father, ever defended us. A quiet man who worked as an accountant for 40 years before retiring, he'd interrupt their insinuations with gentle redirections. "Piper looks exactly like Jenna," he'd say firmly, "and she has Brett's smile. That's all that matters." But Francine's obsession grew worse over the years. She'd accidentally forget to invite Piper to cousins' birthday parties. She'd buy elaborate gifts for Deanna's twin boys and Colton's daughter, then give Piper dollar store coloring books. She'd take the other grandchildren for special grandma days at her bakeries, letting them decorate cookies and cakes, but always had an excuse when we asked about Piper's turn. "The ovens are being repaired," she'd say, or "the insurance won't cover non-employees in the kitchen right now." Brett tried to address it with her repeatedly. "Mom, you're hurting Piper's feelings. She notices that you treat her differently." "I treat all my grandchildren the same," Francine would insist, her voice dripping with false innocence. "If Piper feels left out, maybe you should ask yourself why she doesn't fit in with the family." The breaking point should have come last Christmas when Francine gave all the grandchildren matching gold bracelets with their initials, except Piper's was clearly plastic-painted gold. My daughter, sweet as she is, just said thank you and wore it until it turned her wrist green. But I started planning that day. I knew Francine would escalate and I needed to be ready. What I didn't know was that she'd already been planning something so cruel, so calculated that it would destroy her own family in the process. She thought she could break my daughter, humiliate me, and drive us out of the Brennan family forever. She thought wrong. Because what Francine never understood about librarians is that we're researchers at heart. We know how to find information, how to verify sources, and how to uncover the truth. And the truth about Francine Brennan was far more damaging than any lie she could tell about my daughter. Life wasn't supposed to be this complicated. When I married Brett 10 years ago, I thought I was joining a warm, successful family who would embrace me the way my own family had embraced him. My parents, Rosa and Dennis, had welcomed Brett like the son they'd always wanted. My dad taught him how to fix cars in our garage, and my mother sent him home with containers of her famous arroz con pollo every Sunday. My sister Meredith joked that Brett was the favorite child she'd been replaced by, and my brother Nolan flew him out to Chicago just to go to Cubs games together. Our home in West Hartford reflected everything Brett and I valued. It wasn't the sprawling mansion Francine lived in, but our 4-bedroom colonial had character. I'd painted the library room sage green and filled it with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Brett had converted the basement into an examination room where he could treat injured wildlife after hours. Our backyard was a paradise for Piper, complete with a swing set, a vegetable garden she helped me tend, and a collection of bird feeders that attracted cardinals and blue jays year-round. I loved my job at Morley Elementary School. Being a librarian wasn't just about checking out books. It was about watching 6-year-olds discover that reading could transport them anywhere. It was about helping struggling readers find that one book that would change everything. It was about creating puppet shows for kindergartners and hosting poetry slams for 5th graders. My principal, Dr. Patricia Hawkins, often said I had transformed the library from a quiet room into the beating heart of the school. Mrs. Brennan read us the best dragon story today, kids would tell their parents at pickup. She did all the voices and everything. Brett's veterinary practice specialized in exotic animals, which meant our dinner conversations were never boring. I performed surgery on a chameleon today, he'd announce, still amazed after all these years. His owner drove 3 hours because we're the only clinic that handles reptiles. But every Sunday, we had to face the Brennan family dinner at Francine's house. The mansion sat on 3 acres in Glastonbury, complete with a pool, tennis court, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Francine would hold court at the head of the dining table, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled, her nails manicured, her clothes always designer labels I couldn't pronounce. "Jenna, dear," she'd say, examining my outfit with barely concealed disdain. "Is that dress from Target? How practical of you." The insults were always wrapped in false sweetness. A librarian, how nice, though I suppose someone has to do the simple jobs. Or Brett could have married Dr. Morrison's daughter. She's a cardiologist now. But I suppose love makes us do foolish things. Deanna would sit beside her mother, nodding along. She'd inherited Francine's sharp features and sharper tongue. "Piper seems so different from my boys," she'd observe. "Marcus and Theo are so obviously Brennans. They have the family chin." Her twins, now 10, were spoiled beyond belief. Francine bought them dirt bikes, gaming systems, and designer clothes. They attended private school and spent summers at camps that cost more than my monthly salary. Colton and Trina were equally insufferable. Trina came from the Ashford family, old Connecticut money that stretched back to the Mayflower. She decorated their home entirely in white and beige, and their daughter, Scarlett, 7, wasn't allowed to play outside because it might dirty her clothes. "We're considering the Brightmoor Academy for Scarlett," Trina would announce. "Where does Piper go again? Public school? How diverse that must be." The way she said diverse made it sound like a disease. Gerald tried to keep peace. He was everything Francine wasn't. Quiet, thoughtful, genuinely kind. He'd worked as an accountant at the same firm for 40 years, never missing a day, never complaining. He wore the same style of khakis and polo shirts he'd worn since the 80s, and his idea of excitement was finding a new bird species at the feeder. "Piper's school has an excellent reputation," he'd interject when the criticism got too harsh. "Public education built this country." "Gerald, please," Francine would snap. "Don't be naive." 3 months before Piper's 8th birthday party, something shifted. Francine became obsessed with ancestry websites and DNA testing. "Everyone should know their heritage," she announced one Sunday. "I'm having the whole family tested. It'll be fun." Brett refused. "Mom, that's unnecessary and invasive." "What are you hiding?" Deanna asked, her eyes glittering with malice. "Nothing," Brett said firmly. "We just don't need to prove anything to anyone." That's when I noticed Francine watching Piper more intently, studying her features like she was memorizing them for some future purpose. She'd take photos of Piper when she thought I wasn't looking, and I caught her measuring Piper's height against her own grandchildren. I should have known she was planning something, but I never imagined she'd go as far as she did. The birthday party was supposed to be perfect. We'd rented the Elmwood Community Center, a beautiful space with high ceilings and huge windows that let in natural light. I'd spent weeks planning every detail. Purple and silver streamers twisted from the ceiling beams, unicorn balloons clustered at every table, and a hand-painted banner reading, "Happy 8th Birthday Piper," stretched across the main wall. I'd even hired a face painter and a balloon artist to keep the kids entertained. My parents had driven up from Richmond 2 days early to help with preparations. My mother, Rosa, spent Friday night making 3 types of empanadas while my father, Dennis, assembled party favor bags at our kitchen table, grumbling good-naturedly about the amount of glitter involved. "This stuff gets everywhere," he complained, finding sparkles in his gray beard. "I'll be shining like a disco ball for weeks." My sister Meredith arrived Saturday morning with her twins, Logan and Lucy, who immediately started helping Piper arrange the unicorn centerpieces I'd ordered. My brother Nolan flew in from Chicago that same morning, carrying an enormous wrapped gift that he refused to let anyone touch. "Uncle Nolan, is it a real unicorn?" Piper asked, bouncing on her toes. "Better," he promised. "It's a telescope so you can look for unicorns on the moon." The party started at 2 o'clock. Piper wore her favorite purple dress with layers of tulle that made her feel like a princess, and a silver tiara I'd bought specially for the occasion. Her auburn curls were pulled back with sparkly clips, and she'd insisted on purple nail polish to match her dress. "Mommy, this is the best day ever," she squealed, hugging me for the 10th time that hour. Families started arriving right on time. Brett's cousins came with their children, my coworkers from school brought their kids, and Piper's classmates ran in with presents and excitement. The community center filled with the sound of children laughing and adults chatting over punch and appetizers. Then the Brennan family arrived. Francine swept in wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage, carrying an enormous pink box instead of a wrapped present. Deanna followed with Marcus and Theo, who immediately started complaining that the party games looked babyish. Colton and Trina arrived last, with Scarlett in a white dress that seemed completely inappropriate for a children's party. "Where should I put this?" Francine asked, gesturing to the pink box. "It needs to be the centerpiece, of course." "That's where the cake is going," I explained, pointing to the designated cake table. "This is the cake, dear." Francine smiled, but her eyes were cold. "I insisted on making it myself. After all, I am the professional baker in the family." Brett looked confused. "Mom, we already ordered a cake from Santino's bakery." "Cancel it," Francine commanded. "No grandchild of mine is having a store-bought cake when I own 3 bakeries." To avoid a scene, we called Santino's and apologized for the last-minute cancellation. They were understanding, though we still had to pay for it. Francine positioned her pink box on the cake table like it was a piece of art in a museum. The party continued with games and activities. The face painter transformed children into butterflies and tigers. The balloon artist created elaborate swords and flowers. Piper was radiant, running from friend to friend, her laughter filling the space. When it came time for cake, Francine took control. She clinked a spoon against her glass, demanding attention from all 53 guests. "Before we sing to my granddaughter," she announced, emphasizing the word granddaughter strangely, "I have a very special surprise. Piper, darling, come open your special birthday box." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. I looked at Brett, who seemed equally puzzled. Gerald was frowning from his seat near the window. "Go ahead, sweetheart," Deanna encouraged, her phone already out and recording. "Open your surprise." Colton had positioned himself for the best angle, his phone also recording. Trina was smirking behind her hand, whispering something to another cousin. Piper approached the pink box with the excitement only a child can have for surprises. She lifted the ornate lid carefully. Inside, instead of a cake, was a white document box tied with a red ribbon. "What is it, Grandma Francine?" Piper asked, confused but still smiling. "Open it and read it to everyone," Francine commanded. Piper untied the ribbon and lifted out a document. Her 8-year-old eyes struggled with the formal text. "Mommy, I can't read this writing. It's all red and scary looking." I moved forward, my heart pounding, and took the paper from her small hands. As I read the words, my blood turned to ice. In large red letters across the top, "Proof of infidelity, DNA test results." Below it, "You're not one of us. Your mother cheated. Even your real parents didn't want you." The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the community center's hardwood floor. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. Something cold and calculated took over me, like a switch flipping in my brain. While Meredith rushed to pick up my sobbing daughter, while my mother Rosa gasped in horror, while my father Dennis stood with his fists clenched, I became perfectly, dangerously calm. "You want to talk about DNA tests, Francine?" I said, my voice steady as steel. "Let's talk about DNA tests." Brett looked at me in confusion. "Jenna, what are you doing?" I pulled out my phone from my purse, the same phone where I'd been collecting evidence for 3 months. 3 months of preparation for whatever Francine might do, though I never imagined she'd sink this low. "You know what's interesting about family reunions?" I asked the room, though my eyes never left Francine's face. "People drink wine. They get comfortable. They tell stories they probably shouldn't." Francine's perfectly composed face showed the first crack. "What are you talking about?" "Last summer at your family reunion in Martha's Vineyard, your cousin Lorraine had quite a bit of Pinot Grigio. She told me the most fascinating story about your teenage years." "Lorraine is a drunk," Francine spat. "Nothing she says means anything." "Maybe," I agreed, swiping through my phone to find the video file I'd saved in 3 different cloud services, just to be safe. "But you know what does mean something? Documentation, records, birth certificates from 1982. Gerald stepped forward. "Jenna, what's going on?" "Your wife has been keeping a secret for 43 years, I said, connecting my phone to the community center's AV system. Thank God for all those library tech workshops I'd attended. The Samsung screen mirrored perfectly to the large TV mounted on the wall. "This is ridiculous," Deanna interjected. "Mom, tell her to stop this nonsense." But Francine had gone pale. She knew exactly what was coming. The video started playing. There was Lorraine, Francine's first cousin, sitting with me at a picnic table at the reunion. Her voice was slightly slurred but clear enough. "You know what kills me about Francine? She acts so high and mighty, judging everyone else's choices. But she had a baby at 17. Got knocked up by some drummer in a band called the Midnight Rebels. Can you believe it? Her parents shipped her off to one of those homes for unwed mothers in Vermont. She gave the baby up for adoption and came back like nothing happened." The community center erupted in whispers. Brett stared at his mother in shock. Gerald's face had gone from confused to devastated. But I wasn't done. I swiped to the next file. "This is a report from the private investigator I hired," I announced, the document appearing on the screen. "Catherine Mitchell, born April 15, 1982, in Burlington, Vermont. Adopted by David and Patricia Mitchell of Boston. Graduate of Boston University, married to Thomas Chen, mother of 2. She's been searching for her birth mother for 20 years. I swiped again. Here's her letter to the adoption agency, asking for any information about her biological parents. It says, "I don't want money or to disrupt anyone's life. I just want to know where I come from. I want to know my medical history for my children. I want to know if I have siblings." Francine's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the edge of a table for support. "But here's the really interesting part," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "When Catherine finally tracked you down last year, you rejected her. You told her never to contact you again. You threatened her with a restraining order if she tried to reach out to your family." Gerald's voice was barely a whisper. "Francine, is this true?" "It was before you," Francine cried out. "It was before I met you. It has nothing to do with us. 26 years of marriage and you never told me you had a child?" Gerald's quiet demeanor cracked completely. I told you everything about my past, everything. And you had a daughter you gave away? I pulled up one more document on my phone. Now, let's address this fake DNA test you created to hurt my daughter. Here's the real DNA test from Hartford Medical Center, conducted 6 weeks ago when I suspected you might try something like this. Piper is 99.9% Brett's biological daughter. Brett grabbed the papers from the white box, examining them closely under the light. These aren't even real medical documents. This letterhead is printed wrong. The laboratory doesn't exist. You fabricated all of this? I also have emails, I added, showing the screen, between you and someone named Derek Morrison, who apparently works at a print shop. You paid him $300 to create these fake documents. He was very helpful when my investigator contacted him. The room was in complete chaos. Parents were covering their children's ears. Some of Francine's society. Friends were already heading for the exits, phones in hand, no doubt ready to spread this scandal across Hartford's social scene. Please, Francine dropped to her knees, actually dropped to her knees in her cream suit on the community center floor. Please, Jenna, delete it all. I'm begging you. Gerald stood up slowly, his face ashen, his hands trembling as he gripped the back of his chair. In 26 years of marriage, I'd never seen him look so devastated. This quiet man who'd spent decades supporting his wife's ambitions, defending her harsh judgments, and making excuses for her cruelty was finally seeing the truth. Francine, is this true? He asked, his voice breaking. Gerald, I can explain, Francine stammered from her position on the floor, her designer suit crumpling against the hardwood. Is it true? Gerald roared, and the entire room jumped. Sweet, mild-mannered Gerald, who never raised his voice, who solved every problem with patient discussion, was suddenly a man transformed by betrayal. It was before you, Francine cried, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I was 17. My parents made me give her up. It meant nothing. 26 years, Gerald said, his voice dropping back to a whisper that was somehow more devastating than his shout. 26 years of marriage, and you never told me you had a child? When we struggled to conceive Brett, when we went through months of fertility treatments, you never thought to mention you'd already had a baby? But I wasn't done. The investigator I'd hired had been thorough, and Francine needed to understand the complete destruction of the facade she'd built. I pulled up another document on my phone, casting it to the TV screen. Here's something else interesting. 3 weeks ago, you went to a laboratory in Stamford. You paid cash, used a fake name, and submitted DNA samples. But here's the thing about security cameras, Francine. They record everything. The screen showed grainy but clear footage of Francine at a desk, filling out paperwork. The real test results from that lab show exactly what the legitimate test shows. I continued. Piper is Brett's daughter. But you paid someone named Craig Hoffman, a lab tech with gambling debts, $5,000 to create a second falsified report. He kept your text messages. I showed the messages on screen. Need the results to show negative match. Payment ready. This is fraud. Could lose my job. $10,000 then. Half now, half after. Brett was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. You paid $10,000 to destroy an 8-year-old child? Your own granddaughter? She never looked like us, Francine screamed, finally standing up, her composure completely shattered. That red hair, those light eyes. She looks nothing like you, Brett. She looks exactly like my wife, Brett shouted back. And even if she didn't, even if she was adopted, even if she was purple with polka, Dots, she's my daughter. Mine, how dare you? Deanna tried to salvage something from the wreckage. Mom was just trying to protect the family legacy. If there were doubts about Piper's parentage, it could affect inheritance issues. What inheritance? Gerald asked coldly. The money Francine earns from her bakeries? That's hers. My retirement funds? Those go to my children and grandchildren equally. There was never any fortune to protect, Deanna. Your mother tortured a child over nothing but pride and prejudice. Colton, who'd been recording everything, finally lowered his phone. Mom, this is beyond repair. When this gets out, and it will get out, your bakeries will be finished. No one will buy a birthday cake from someone who destroyed a child's birthday. Please, Francine begged again, turning to me. Please, Jenna, Delete everything. I'll do anything. I'll give you money. I'll sign over one of the bakeries to you. Anything." My mother Rosa stepped forward then, her 5'2" frame radiating fury. "You want her to delete evidence of what you did? You traumatized my granddaughter in front of 50 people, and you want to buy your way out of it?" "I made a mistake," Francine wailed. "No," my father Dennis interjected, his military bearing evident in his stance. "A mistake is forgetting a birthday or buying the wrong size dress. You planned this for months. You committed fraud. You conspired with multiple people. You chose the most public, humiliating way possible to hurt a little girl. That's not a mistake. That's evil." I knelt down next to Piper, who was still crying in Meredith's arms, her little body shaking with sobs she couldn't control. "Baby, look at me. Look at Mommy." Piper's tear-stained face turned toward me. "Why doesn't Grandma Francine want me?" "Because Grandma Francine is sick in her heart," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sometimes people are so unhappy with themselves that they hurt others. But you are loved, you are wanted, you are precious, and nothing anyone says will ever change that." Then I stood and faced Francine one more time. "You want me to delete this? Here are my terms, and they're non-negotiable. You will pay for Piper's therapy for as long as she needs it, with no cap and no time limit. You will transfer ownership of your newest bakery, the one in West Hartford, to a trust fund in Piper's name for her college education. You will write a letter of apology to be held in trust until Piper is 18, when she can decide if she wants to read it. And you will never, ever contact my daughter again, unless she chooses to contact you when she's an adult." "That's extortion," Colton protested, though his heart wasn't in it. "No," Brett said firmly. "That's consequences." The party ended with Francine signing a legal agreement that my brother Nolan drafted right there in the community center. As a contracts lawyer, he never traveled without his laptop, and he had a standard settlement template that he modified on the spot. Francine's hands shook as she signed it, mascara streaking down her cheeks in black rivers. Deanna, Colton, and Trina slunk out without saying goodbye, their heads down, their phones already buzzing with messages from people who'd witnessed the catastrophe. Gerald left without speaking to his wife. He stopped only to kiss Piper on the forehead and whisper, "You're my granddaughter, sweet pea. Always have been. Always will be." Then he walked out with his shoulders straight and his decision made. The rest of the family stayed to salvage what they could of Piper's birthday. My sister Meredith cranked up the Bluetooth speaker and started a dance party. My dad performed card tricks and terrible jokes until he got Piper to crack a small smile. Even some of Brett's cousins who'd been horrified by Francine's behavior stayed to support us, helping serve the backup sheet cake we'd frantically ordered from the grocery store. That night, after tucking Piper into bed with extra stories and her favorite stuffed unicorn, Brett and I sat on our front porch with glasses of wine neither of us could drink. "How long have you known about my mother's secret?" he asked quietly. 3 months. Since the reunion when Lorraine got drunk. I hired the investigator the next day because I could feel your mother building towards something. I just never imagined she'd go this far." "You protected our daughter like a warrior," Brett said, pulling me close. "While I stood there frozen, you fought back. I'm sorry I didn't see what my mother was capable of." "Family makes us blind sometimes," I replied, leaning into his warmth. "We want to believe the best about the people we love." 6 months have passed since that birthday party, and the aftermath has been both devastating and healing. Piper goes to therapy twice a week with Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a child psychologist who specializes in family trauma. Some days are harder than others. Piper still asks why Grandma Francine was so mean to her, and I tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways. Some people carry hurt inside them for so long that it turns into anger, I explain. Grandma Francine gave away a baby when she was young, and that sadness got twisted into meanness. But that's not your fault, baby. That's never your fault. The Bakery Trust Fund will pay for any college Piper chooses. The West Hartford location, now managed by an outside company, generates about $80,000 a year that goes directly into her education account. By the time she's 18, she'll have enough for any university in the country. Gerald filed for divorce the Monday after the party. The proceedings were swift. Francine didn't contest anything. She gave him the house, half of everything else, and agreed to his terms without argument. The fight had gone out of her completely. Gerald now lives in a smaller ranch house near us and has dinner with us 3 times a week. He's dating Helen, a retired teacher who volunteers at my library. She makes him laugh in a way I never saw in 26 years of knowing him. Francine's reputation never recovered. The story spread through Hartford's social circles like wildfire. 2 of her 3 bakeries closed within 4 months. The third limps along with a skeleton crew. She moved to a condo in Westport where nobody knows her story, though I doubt she'll ever regain her former status. Last week, something unexpected happened. Catherine Mitchell, Francine's firstborn daughter, reached out to me through Facebook. She'd heard about what happened through the investigation coverage and wanted to thank me. "You stood up to the woman who rejected me twice," she wrote. "Once when I was born, and again when I tried to find her last year. You protected your daughter the way I wish someone had protected me." We met for coffee in Boston. Catherine looks nothing like Francine, thankfully. She has kind eyes and a warm smile. She showed me pictures of her own children and talked about her work as a pediatric nurse. "Some people shouldn't be mothers," Catherine said, stirring her latte. "But you're exactly the mother Piper needs. You fought for her when it mattered most." Brett cut contact with his mother entirely. He blocked her number, returned her letters unopened, and refused all attempts at reconciliation. Deanna occasionally texts him apologies, but he's not ready to forgive. Colton reached out once to say he and Trina were divorcing, partly because of how she'd participated in the scheme. He's trying to be better, but trust takes time to rebuild. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who stands by you when someone tries to tear you down. It's about who helps put the pieces back together when everything falls apart. My parents, my siblings, Gerald, Helen, and all the friends who stayed that day to dance at a ruined party, they're our real family. The video and documents, I kept everything, backed up in multiple places. Not for blackmail, but as evidence of what we survived, and as a reminder that sometimes the truth is the most powerful weapon against cruelty. If anyone ever tries to hurt my daughter again, they should know something important. I'm a librarian. I know how to research, document, and build an airtight case. I know how to find information people think is buried forever. And most importantly, I know how to tell a story that ends with justice. Because that's what mothers do. We protect our children from monsters, even when those monsters share their blood. We stand between our babies and anyone who would harm them. We fight with everything we have, using every tool at our disposal. Piper is thriving now. She still loves unicorns, still reads above grade level, and still tries to adopt every stray animal she meets. She's learned that someone else's cruelty doesn't define her worth. She knows she's loved, wanted, and cherished by the people who matter. Last week, she asked me, "Mommy, do you think Grandma Francine is sad now?" "Probably," I admitted. "Good," she said with the honesty only a child can possess. "Maybe being sad will teach her not to be mean." From the mouths of babes comes wisdom. My daughter is stronger than Francine ever imagined. She's resilient, kind, and filled with joy that no amount of cruelty could extinguish. She's a survivor, just like her mother. And we're both exactly where we belong, surrounded by people who love us for who we really are. That's the real victory, not the trust fund or the legal agreement or even Francine's downfall. The victory is that my daughter knows her worth, and no one will ever be able to take that away from her again. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. As parents, we never know what battles we'll have to fight for our children, but we know we'll fight them all. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to stand up to family members who tried to hurt your children, you're not alone. Please like this video if it touched your heart. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not crazy for protecting their kids from toxic family members. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of parents who refuse to let anyone hurt their children. Drop a comment below about a time you had to stand up for your child, no matter how small the incident. Sometimes the smallest acts of protection mean the most. Remember, you're the parent your child needs, exactly as you are. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.